My daughter grew up only with me because her mother left us, and when she returned with a new father, at the wedding my daughter walked down the aisle with her new dad instead of me. Hey Reddit, this is a bit of a long one, but I really need some advice. Or maybe I just need to get it all out of my system. My name's Michael, I'm 52, and I've been a single dad for most of my daughter Alyssa's life. She's 22 now, but this story starts way back when she was just 5 years old. Her mom, Rebecca, left us. Just like that. One morning, I woke up, and there was a note on the kitchen counter. I can't do this anymore. Don't look for me. I still remember standing there, holding that crumpled piece of paper, trying to figure out how the hell I was going to explain to my little girl that her mommy was gone. Raising Alyssa alone wasn't easy, but we made it work. She was my entire world, and I did everything I could to give her a good life. I stayed up late sewing costumes for her school plays, braided her hair when she begged me to, and even figured out how to bake because she wanted a homemade cake for her birthdays. We were a team. It wasn't perfect, but it was us. Fast forward 12 years. Alyssa was 17 and just about to graduate high school when Rebecca walked back into our lives. To say I was blindsided would be an understatement. It started with a phone call. Her voice, after all those years, saying, "Michael, I need to see Alyssa. I've changed." I didn't tell Alyssa right away. I mean, how do you drop that kind of bomb on someone? But Rebecca didn't give me much choice. She showed up at Alyssa's soccer game one afternoon, standing off to the side with her perfectly done hair and a man by her side. I knew immediately it was her. And Alyssa saw her too. I'll never forget the look on Alyssa's face. Confusion, hurt, anger. It was like she couldn't figure out which emotion to grab onto first. Rebecca walked up to her after the game, all smiles, and said, "Hi, sweetheart. I've missed you so much." I thought Alyssa was going to yell, cry, or maybe even walk away. Instead, she just stared at her and said, "Where the hell have you been?" Rebecca launched into this long-winded explanation about how she wasn't ready to be a mom back then, how she had to find herself, whatever that means, and how she regretted leaving every single day. She introduced the man next to her as Tom, her husband, and tried to paint this picture of a happy, stable life they'd built together. Alyssa was polite, too polite. She said, "Nice to meet you," and let Rebecca hug her, but I could see in her eyes that she was putting up walls. When we got in the car to go home, she was silent. I asked her how she felt about seeing her mom again, and she just said, "I don't know." Rebecca didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, she started texting Alyssa, asking to meet up for lunch or coffee. At first, Alyssa was hesitant, but eventually, curiosity got the better of her. I think she wanted answers, closure, maybe. I tried to stay out of it, but it was hard. I hated seeing Rebecca waltz back into Alyssa's life after all the years I spent picking up the pieces she left behind. And Tom? He gave me bad vibes from the start. He was too slick, too charming, like he was trying to sell us something. Things came to a head one night when Rebecca and Tom invited Alyssa over for dinner. She was excited but nervous, and I told her to call me if she needed anything. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang. It was Alyssa, her voice shaky. "Dad, can you come get me?" When I picked her up, she looked like she'd been crying. She didn't want to talk about it right away, but eventually, she told me what happened. Apparently, Tom had made some offhand comment about how lucky Alyssa was to have a mom who cared enough to come back, and Rebecca didn't defend her. Alyssa said she felt like they were trying to rewrite history, acting like Rebecca had been some kind of victim for leaving us. After that, things got messy. Alyssa started avoiding Rebecca's calls, and Rebecca started showing up at our house unannounced. One time, she stood on our porch for an hour, yelling through the door about how I was poisoning Alyssa against her. Alyssa refused to come out of her room. And then came the bombshell. Alyssa was in her room when she called me upstairs. She was holding an envelope Rebecca had left in our mailbox. Inside were pages and pages of court documents. Rebecca was suing me for partial custody of Alyssa. I couldn't believe it. Alyssa was 17, almost an adult, and Rebecca suddenly decided she wanted a say in her life? I called a lawyer the next morning, and the whole thing turned into a nightmare. Rebecca claimed I had alienated Alyssa from her, and Tom even testified, saying I was overprotective and controlling. Alyssa took the stand during the hearing. She was so brave, standing there and telling the judge exactly how she felt. My dad raised me. He's my parent. Rebecca is just someone who left and decided she wanted to come back when it was convenient for her. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. I was so proud of her. The judge sided with us, thank God, but the whole ordeal left a scar. Alyssa stopped answering Rebecca's text completely, and I thought we were finally free of her. But then something strange happened. Tom showed up at my work one day. He looked nervous, almost panicked, and said he needed to talk. We went outside, and he told me that Rebecca had been lying to him too. He said she wasn't who he thought she was, and that he was planning to leave her. That's when things took a turn I didn't expect. Tom started showing up more and more, asking questions about Alyssa, about our life before Rebecca left. At first, I thought he was just trying to make sense of everything, but then it started to feel weird, almost like he was trying to insert himself into our lives. One night, he showed up drunk, pounding on the door and yelling that Rebecca had ruined his life. I had to call the cops to get him to leave. After that, things escalated even further, but I'll save that for the next post. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to keep my daughter safe from all this chaos. Any advice? Hey, Reddit. It's Michael again. I never thought I'd be back here, but something happened recently that shook me to my core, and I need to get it off my chest. If you've been following my story, you know about my daughter Alyssa and the chaos her mom Rebecca brought into our lives. Well, Alyssa is 32 now and getting married. What should have been one of the happiest days of my life turned into something I'm still trying to process. Alyssa's fiancé, Eric, is a good guy. He's smart, hardworking, and treats her well. Everything a father could hope for. The wedding planning was in full swing, and I was genuinely excited to see her start this new chapter. I never thought I'd live to see the day when my little girl would be standing at the altar, looking radiant in a white dress. But then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell on me. It started a few weeks ago during a family dinner. Alyssa had invited me, Rebecca, and her stepfather Tom over to her place to discuss wedding arrangements. Rebecca and I have learned to tolerate each other over the years, and for Alyssa's sake, I try to keep the peace. Tom, well, he's been around for 15 years now, but let's just say we're not exactly friends. After we finished eating, Alyssa stood up, smiling nervously. I have something to announce, she said, glancing around the room. I figured it was something about the guest list or the honeymoon plans. But then she said, I've decided who's going to walk me down the aisle. My heart stopped. I'd been waiting for this moment for years. Ever since she was a little girl, I'd imagined walking her down the aisle, holding her hand as she took that big step into the next phase of her life. I mean, who else could it be? I'm her dad. But then she said it. I've asked Tom to walk me down the aisle. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside, I was reeling. Rebecca beamed like she'd won some kind of competition, and Tom looked smug as hell. Meanwhile, Alyssa kept talking, explaining her decision. Tom has been a big part of my life, she said. He's been there for me through so much, and it just feels right. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tom? The guy who swooped in after Rebecca abandoned us? The guy who wasn't there for her first day of school, her first heartbreak, or any of the countless moments that mattered. I was the one who stayed up with her when she had nightmares, who worked 2 jobs to put her through college. And now she was giving him the honor that should have been mine. I didn't say anything at the table. I didn't want to make a scene, especially with Rebecca sitting there, practically gloating. But later that night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I called Alyssa and asked her why. Dad, it's not about choosing one of you over the other, she said. You'll still be part of the wedding, but Tom is important to me too. He's been there for the last 15 years, and I want to honor that. I wanted to argue, to remind her of everything I'd done for her, but I didn't want to guilt her. Still, it hurt. It hurt more than I can put into words. The wedding day arrived, and I was determined to be supportive, even if it killed me inside. I showed up early wearing my best suit and tried to focus on Alyssa's happiness. She looked beautiful, radiant even, and I told her so. She hugged me and said, "Thanks, Dad. I'm glad you're here." I smiled, but it felt hollow. I kept imagining her walking down the aisle with Tom by her side, and it made my stomach churn. As the ceremony began, I took my seat in the front row, sitting next to Rebecca. Tom was standing with Alyssa at the back of the church, and when the music started, they began walking toward the altar. I couldn't help but notice how proud he looked, like he was the one who'd raised her, who'd sacrificed for her. I felt invisible, like I didn't even belong there. The reception was even worse. During her speech, Alyssa thanked Tom for being a steady presence in her life and for helping her become the woman she is today. She thanked me too, but it felt like an afterthought. By then, I was struggling to keep my emotions in check. And then came the real twist. After the speeches, Rebecca approached me. "Michael," she said, her voice low, "I know you're upset about Alyssa's decision, but maybe this is a good time for you to reflect on why she feels closer to Tom." I stared at her, stunned. "What the hell are you talking about?" She smirked. "Oh, come on. You've always been so overbearing, so controlling. Maybe Alyssa needed someone who could give her space to grow." I couldn't believe her audacity. This coming from the woman who abandoned her daughter and waltzed back into her life like nothing had happened. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. Later that night, Tom came up to me. He was drunk, and he started rambling about how Rebecca had manipulated him over the years. He said she pressured him to push for more involvement in Alyssa's life, that it was all about her trying to rewrite the past. "She wanted to erase you," he slurred. "Make it like you were never there." That's when something clicked. This wasn't just about Alyssa's decision. It was about Rebecca trying to rewrite history, to make it look like she and Tom had been the perfect parents all along. Hi Reddit. It's Michael again. I've been struggling with something that I need to get off my chest. You guys were helpful last time, so here goes. Alyssa's wedding is coming up, and instead of feeling like a proud dad, I feel lost, hurt, betrayed, even. Let me explain. A couple of weeks ago, Alyssa dropped the news that she wanted Tom, her stepfather, to walk her down the aisle. I've been trying to make peace with it, but no matter how much I tell myself it's her decision, I can't shake this gnawing feeling inside me. It's not just about the aisle, it's about what it represents. Tom came into Alyssa's life when she was 17. He's been around for a while now, sure, but let's not forget, I raised her. I was the one who stayed when Rebecca left, the one who dried her tears and celebrated her wins. And now, at one of the most important moments of her life, she's choosing him over me. It feels like being benched in the final quarter of a game you've been playing your whole life. The decision didn't come out of nowhere. I've been replaying the weeks leading up to her announcement, looking for signs I missed. And now that I think about it, Rebecca was more involved in the wedding planning than I expected. She's never been a hands-on mom, at least, not when it came to the hard stuff. But lately, she's been front and center, helping Alyssa pick out flowers, calling the caterer, even hosting little pre-wedding get-togethers at her house. I don't begrudge Alyssa for wanting her mom involved. She's always wanted that relationship, even after Rebecca left. But there's a difference between reconnecting and rewriting history. And that's exactly what Rebecca seems to be doing, crafting this picture-perfect narrative where she's the doting mom, Tom is the supportive stepdad, and I'm, what? An afterthought? A guest at my own daughter's wedding? It all came to a head at one of those get-togethers. Rebecca invited me, probably out of obligation more than anything else. I showed up, mostly for Alyssa's sake, but it was awkward from the start. Rebecca was holding court in the kitchen, laughing with Alyssa and her fiancé Eric, while Tom hovered nearby, chiming in like he was the patriarch of the family. At one point, I overheard Rebecca talking to Alyssa about the seating arrangements. She said, "It'll be nice to have everyone together. A real family moment." I couldn't hold back. I stepped in and said, "Alyssa's always had a family. It just didn't look like this." The room went silent. Rebecca gave me that tight-lipped smile she always does when she's trying to keep her composure. "Of course, Michael," she said. "But isn't it wonderful that we can all come together now?" Wonderful? No, it wasn't wonderful. It was infuriating. But I bit my tongue and walked away. Alyssa caught up with me later and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, but she didn't look convinced. "Dad," she said, "I really want this day to be special. Can you just try?" Try? Try to what? Pretend like I don't feel like a guest at my own daughter's wedding? But I nodded and said, "Of course, sweetheart." What else could I say? The real kicker came last night. I was going through some old photo albums, pictures of Alyssa as a baby, her first day of school, her high school graduation. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Tom isn't in any of these photos. Rebecca isn't in most of them either. It's just me and Alyssa. I started to wonder, what happened? How did I go from being her whole world to being sidelined? Then it dawned on me, Rebecca. She's always had a way of spinning things to suit her narrative. She's the one who waltzed back into Alyssa's life when she was 17 and started planting seeds. Little comments here and there about how I was too strict or too overprotective. She made herself the fun parent, the one who understood Alyssa in a way I never could. And now, she's orchestrating this perfect family picture, with Tom at the center and me pushed to the edges. I've been grappling with what to do. Part of me wants to confront Alyssa, to tell her how much this hurts. But another part of me doesn't want to ruin her big day. She's happy, and isn't that what matters? But here's the thing. I can't fake it. I can't sit there and watch Tom take my place, acting like it doesn't tear me apart inside. I tried to imagine myself at the wedding, clapping politely during the speeches, smiling for the cameras, pretending like everything is fine. But it's not fine, and I don't think I can do it. So I made a decision. I'm not going to the wedding. I know how that sounds. I know people will judge me for it. But this isn't about spite or revenge. It's about self-preservation. I've given Alyssa everything I have, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. But I can't stand there and watch her choose someone else to take my place. I just can't. I wrote her a letter. It took me hours to find the right words. I told her how proud I am of her, how much I love her, and how I'll always be there for her. I explained that this isn't about her decision. It's about me needing to protect my own heart. I left the letter on her doorstep this morning. Now I'm sitting here, wondering if I made the right choice. Did I let my pride get in the way? Or is it okay to draw a line and say, this is too much? I don't know. All I know is that I love my daughter, and I hope she understands. Hi Reddit, it's Michael again. If you followed my story, you know how much I've struggled with my daughter Alyssa's decision to have her stepfather Tom walk her down the aisle instead of me. The wedding came and went, and I didn't attend. But that was just the beginning. What happened afterward has left me questioning everything. After I sent Alyssa the letter explaining why I couldn't attend her wedding, I didn't hear from her for a few weeks. Part of me thought she might come by or call, but the silence was deafening. I tried to convince myself that she was busy with post-wedding life, but deep down, I knew better. During that time, I found myself reevaluating a lot of things, especially my future. I've always thought of Alyssa as my legacy. Everything I've done, every sacrifice I've made, has been for her. But her decision to choose Tom over me felt like a betrayal, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it said something bigger about how she sees me. If Tom is the father she wants, maybe I'm not the father she needs. That's when the idea hit me. My will. For years, Alyssa has been the sole beneficiary. It was never a question. She's my only child, after all. But now, I started to wonder if that was the right decision. I didn't make this choice lightly. I spent hours going over old photos, rereading her childhood notes and cards, trying to convince myself that one decision shouldn't overshadow everything we've been through. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like her actions spoke louder than words ever could. I made an appointment with my lawyer, Diane. She's been handling my estate planning for years and knows how much Alyssa means to me. When I told her what I wanted to do, she looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Michael, she said, are you sure about this? Changing your will is a big deal, especially under these circumstances. I nodded. I'm sure. This isn't about punishing Alyssa. It's about recognizing the reality of our relationship. She's chosen Tom to fill the role of father in her life, and I have to respect that. Diane sighed but didn't argue. We spent the next hour drafting the changes. I decided to leave my estate to charity instead, a local organization that supports single parents. It felt fitting, in a bittersweet way. A few weeks later, Alyssa found out. I don't know how, maybe she talked to Diane, or maybe Rebecca mentioned something. Either way, she showed up at my house one evening, unannounced. When I opened the door, she was standing there with tears in her eyes. Dad, she said, we need to talk. I let her in, and we sat down in the living room. She didn't waste any time. Why would you do this? She asked. Why would you change your will without even talking to me? I took a deep breath. Alyssa, this isn't about punishing you. It's about acknowledging the choices you've made. You chose Tom to walk you down the aisle. You chose to honor him in a way that says he's more important to you than I am. That's fine. It's your decision. But I need to make decisions for myself too. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. Dad, that's not fair. I chose Tom for that moment, but that doesn't mean you're not my father. You've always been my father. Actions speak louder than words, I said. What you did at the wedding showed me where I stand in your life. And that's okay, Alyssa. But I can't pretend like it didn't hurt me. I can't keep giving and giving when it feels like I've already been replaced. We went back and forth for hours. She kept trying to explain her decision, saying it wasn't about replacing me, that it was about including Tom in a way that felt meaningful. But no matter what she said, I couldn't shake the feeling that her actions told a different story. I told her as much. Alyssa, I said, I love you more than anything. That will never change. But love isn't about words. It's about what you do. And what you did. It hurt me in a way I can't ignore. She started crying, and for a moment, I almost caved. But then I remembered all the nights I stayed up worrying about her, all the sacrifices I made to give her a good life, and how easily she'd handed that moment to Tom. I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. The next day, Rebecca called me. She was furious. What the hell are you thinking, Michael? She demanded. Changing your will? Do you have any idea how much you've hurt Alyssa? I stayed calm. Rebecca, this isn't your business. It's between me and Alyssa. She's your daughter. Rebecca snapped. Do you really want to end things like this? I don't want to end anything, I said, but I also can't ignore the choices she's made. This isn't about punishment. It's about reality. Rebecca scoffed. You're unbelievable. No wonder she feels closer to Tom. At least he doesn't pull stunts like this. That hit a nerve, but I didn't let it show. Goodbye, Rebecca, I said, and hung up. The days that followed were quiet but heavy. I could tell Alyssa was struggling with what happened, but she didn't reach out again. I think she needed time to process, just like I did. Meanwhile, I started to feel the weight of my decision. Was I being too harsh? Was this the right way to handle things? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing. I needed to stand my ground. Sometimes, love means making hard choices. And this was one of the hardest I've ever had to make. Hi Reddit. It's Michael again. I've been pouring my heart out here, hoping to make sense of the growing chasm between me and my daughter, Alyssa. What started with her decision to have her stepfather Tom walk her down the aisle has snowballed into something much bigger, a rift that I'm not sure we can ever mend. After I changed my will and Alyssa found out, things were tense but civil. We'd had our big conversation, the one where she cried and told me that her choice didn't mean I wasn't her father. I didn't back down, and while I thought we might be able to move forward, I was wrong. The silence between us stretched longer and longer, and every attempt at contact felt forced, like we were strangers trying to make small talk. I didn't reach out after the wedding. I told myself I needed to give her space, but the truth is, I wasn't ready to face her. Every time I thought about her walking down the aisle with Tom, I felt that same pang of betrayal. Meanwhile, life went on. Work kept me busy, and I tried to distract myself with hobbies, but nothing filled the void Alyssa had left. A month passed, then 2, and I started hearing about Alyssa secondhand. A mutual friend, Lisa, bumped into me at the grocery store one afternoon. Lisa's the kind of person who knows everyone's business, whether you want her to or not. I saw Alyssa the other day, she said casually, sorting through a pile of apples. She looked so happy. Newlywed life must be treating her well. I forced a smile. That's great to hear. Lisa hesitated, then leaned in like she was sharing a secret. You know, she mentioned Tom's name a lot. It sounds like he's really stepped up as a father figure. My stomach twisted. Did she say anything about me? Lisa's face fell. No, but I'm sure she misses you. Give it time, Michael. Time. Everyone keeps saying that, but the more time passes, the further apart we seem to drift. The breaking point came during the holidays. Alyssa had always spent Christmas with me. It was our tradition. I'd make her favorite lasagna. We'd exchange goofy gifts, and we'd stay up late watching old movies. But this year, she didn't come. She didn't even call. Instead, I got a text, "Merry Christmas, Dad. Hope you're doing well. Love you." That was it. No, "I'll stop by" or "let's catch up soon." Just a short, impersonal message that felt more like an obligation than genuine care. I spent the day alone, staring at the empty chair where Alyssa used to sit. The next day, I decided to reach out. I couldn't let this distance between us grow any wider. I called Alyssa, and to my surprise, she answered. Her voice was cheerful, but there was an undercurrent of tension. "Hey, Dad," she said. "How was your Christmas?" "It was quiet," I admitted. "I missed you." She hesitated. "I missed you too." There was a long pause, and then I said, "Alyssa, we need to talk. I feel like things have been strained between us, and I don't want it to be this way." She sighed. "Dad, I know you're upset about the wedding and the will, but can't we just move past it? I don't want to keep rehashing this." "It's not just about the wedding," I said. "It's about feeling like I've been relegated to the background of your life. Like I don't matter anymore." "That's not true," she said quickly. "You'll always matter to me." "Then why does it feel like I'm the last person you think about?" I asked. "You didn't come for Christmas. You didn't even call. Do you have any idea how much that hurt?" Alyssa's voice softened. "I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. But things have been complicated." "Complicated how?" She hesitated again. "Tom and Mom wanted us to have Christmas together this year. It was important to them, and I didn't want to cause a fight." Hearing her say that felt like a dagger to the heart. I wanted to yell, to tell her that I was the one who raised her, that Rebecca and Tom didn't have the right to claim her like this. But I bit my tongue. Instead, I said, "And where does that leave me, Alyssa? Am I just supposed to step aside whenever they want you around?" "That's not what I'm saying," she said. "I'm trying to balance everything, but it's hard." "It shouldn't be this hard," I said. "If I really mattered to you, you'd make the effort." She didn't respond, and the silence was deafening. Finally, she said, "I don't know what you want from me, Dad. I want you to show me that I'm still your father," I said. "That all those years I spent raising you weren't for nothing." The conversation ended on a sour note, and things only got worse from there. Alyssa stopped answering my calls, and I stopped trying. I told myself that she needed to come to me this time, that I'd done enough chasing. But weeks turned into months, and still, there was nothing. I found out through Facebook that Alyssa and Eric had moved into a new house. Rebecca and Tom were tagged in the post, smiling as they helped them unpack boxes. I wasn't mentioned. It was like I didn't exist. One night, I ran into an old friend, Greg, at the bar. Greg's a straight shooter, the kind of guy who doesn't sugarcoat things. When I told him what was going on, he shook his head. "Michael, you're her father. You need to fight for that relationship." "I've tried," I said. "But every time I reach out, it feels like I'm hitting a wall." "Then knock the damn wall down," he said. "She's your daughter. Don't let Rebecca and Tom rewrite the story." His words stuck with me, but I wasn't sure if he was right. At what point do you stop fighting for someone who doesn't seem to want you in their life? How do you know when it's time to let go? I don't have the answers, Reddit. All I know is that the distance between me and Alyssa feels insurmountable. I've tried to be the bigger person, to let go of my hurt and anger, but it's not enough. She's chosen her path, and I'm not sure there's room for me on it. What do you do when the person you've given everything to decides you're no longer part of their story? How do you move forward when the most important relationship in your life feels like it's slipping through your fingers? I'm at a loss. If anyone has advice, I'm all ears. Hi, Reddit. It's Michael again. This is probably the hardest thing I've ever written. Things between my daughter Alyssa and me are worse than ever. What started as a disagreement over her wedding has turned into a chasm that neither of us seems willing or able to bridge. I'm not sure if we'll ever be able to fix it, but I need to tell someone what happened. Maybe getting it all out will help me make sense of it. After our last conversation, where Alyssa told me she spent Christmas with Rebecca and Tom instead of me, I thought we'd hit rock bottom. But as it turns out, we were only getting started. The more I tried to understand her choices, the more confused and hurt I became. Meanwhile, Alyssa kept insisting that her decisions weren't meant to push me away, but her actions said otherwise. She told me she was trying to create harmony between the people she cared about. Harmony? I wanted to laugh. How was choosing Tom to walk her down the aisle or spending Christmas with Rebecca and Tom over me supposed to create harmony? It felt like she was choosing them at every turn, leaving me to wonder if I even had a place in her life anymore. One night, I got a call from a mutual friend, Lauren, who's been close to Alyssa since college. Lauren is one of those people who doesn't mince words, and she sounded worried. "Michael, I think you need to talk to Alyssa," she said. "She's upset. She feels like you're shutting her out." "Shutting her out?" I repeated. "Lauren, she's the one who's been avoiding me. She's the one who made these choices." "I know," Lauren said gently, "but she doesn't see it that way. She thinks you're being too hard on her, that you're not trying to understand where she's coming from." "Where she's coming from?" I snapped. "Lauren, I raised that girl. I gave up everything for her. And now she's telling me I'm not trying hard enough." Lauren sighed. "I'm not saying she's right, Michael. I'm just saying that maybe you two are talking past each other. Maybe if you listened, really listened, you'd understand." Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. Was I being too stubborn? Was there something I was missing? I wasn't sure, but I decided to give it one last shot. I called Alyssa the next day and asked if we could meet. To my surprise, she agreed. We met at a coffee shop near her house, and as soon as I saw her, I felt a pang of longing. She looked tired, like the weight of everything was wearing on her, and I realized that maybe this was just as hard on her as it was on me. "Thanks for meeting me," I said as we sat down. "Of course," she said. "I've been wanting to talk." I took a deep breath. "Alyssa, I need to understand. Why does it feel like you're pushing me away? Is it something I did?" Her eyes widened. "No, Dad, it's not that. I'm not trying to push you away. I don't want there to be conflict. I want everyone to get along." I frowned. "But at what cost, Alyssa? Because it feels like, in trying to create this harmony, you're sacrificing our relationship." She looked down at her hands. "I don't see it that way. I just want everyone to feel included, to feel like they matter." "And what about me?" I asked quietly. "Do I still matter to you?" Her head snapped up. "Of course you do, Dad. You're my father. You'll always matter." "Then why does it feel like I've been relegated to the background of your life?" I asked. "Why does it feel like you're choosing them over me at every turn?" Alyssa's voice cracked as she said, "It's not about choosing, Dad. It's about balancing. I didn't want to hurt anyone." The conversation went on for over an hour, and while we managed to clear the air on some things, the core issue remained unresolved. Alyssa couldn't see how her actions had hurt me, and I couldn't see past the pain to understand her intentions. It felt like we were speaking two different languages. The weeks that followed were filled with small, strained interactions. We'd text occasionally, but the warmth we once shared was gone. I tried to convince myself that time would heal the wound, but every time I saw a post of Alyssa with Rebecca and Tom, laughing at some family event or celebrating another milestone, I felt the knife twist deeper. Things came to a head at a family gathering hosted by Eric's parents. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, but Lauren convinced me that it might be a good opportunity to reconnect with Alyssa. When I arrived, I saw her across the room, chatting with Rebecca and Tom. They looked like the picture-perfect family, and I felt like an outsider crashing their party. At one point, Alyssa came over to me. "Dad," she said, "I'm so glad you're here." "I almost didn't come," I admitted, "but I wanted to see you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I know things have been hard between us, but I hope you know how much I care about you." "Do you?" I asked. "Because sometimes it feels like you've moved on without me." Her face fell. "That's not true, Dad. I'm trying. I really am." "Trying to do what?" I asked. "To make me feel like I still belong in your life? Because if that's the case, you're not doing a very good job." Alyssa's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what else to do, Dad. I'm trying to make everyone happy, but it feels like no matter what I do, I'm letting someone down." That was the moment I realized just how deep our misunderstanding went. Alyssa wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to please everyone, to create a world where no one felt left out. But in doing so, she'd alienated the one person who'd been there for her through it all. The problem was, I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if it could be fixed. All I knew was that the distance between us felt insurmountable, and I wasn't sure if either of us had the strength to bridge it. I left the gathering early, and as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost something precious. Alyssa and I had always been close, but now, it felt like we were strangers navigating the wreckage of a once beautiful relationship. So here I am, writing this and wondering where we go from here. I want to believe that we can find our way back to each other, but I don't know how. If anyone has been through something similar, I'd love to hear your advice. What do you do when love isn't enough to bridge the gap?